Alright, what's going on, Smite community? Welcome to another Smite comprehensive guide. Today's guide is going to be a little bit different as I'm trying to make these as efficient but also as informative as possible. So I'm trying to give you guys the most information in not the least amount of time, but less time, as they have been extremely long. I think one of them was like 30 minutes long. And it is called comprehensive, but I still feel like maybe that's a bit too long. So, Kuang, right here. This is the guy who is... the god who is the focus of this episode. So, this guy right here, I have a history with Kuang. He was actually my first main. It sounds silly because I'm a flex player, so as you can see with my god list, I play a lot of gods. But Kuang was the first one that I actually mastered myself. And he's tricky. Difficulty hard. It depends on how you look at it. His basic stats, if we go up to level 20, we're going to do it the short way this time. His basic stats, he's got low health, decent mana, decent movement speed, all this stuff. Attack speed's very high for a mage because he is a basic attack mage. And then he gets 83 plus 2.4, which is the 20% of his magical power. And then, let's see, progression 1.5, 1 times damage and speed. Cool. Protections, don't even think about it, don't worry about it. Regen, not too great, but that's fine because we build him lifesteal. So we're going to his abilities really quick. So Dragon King Sword, every 20 seconds, Kuang gets a stack of Dragon King Sword with a stack available. His next non-ultimate ability that deals damage to an enemy god has a reduced cooldown and heals Kuang. Successfully executing an enemy god with King of the Eastern Seas fully charges Dragon King Sword. And for the first time, I'm going to skip over to the final ultimate, or the final ability, the ultimate, to tell you King of the Eastern Seas. We're going to explain this really quick, but first, the passive gets a 2-second cooldown reduction and 5% health, and then it only stacks 3 times. You'll see the little symbol once we get in game. So King of the Eastern Seas is a single target attack. You might have seen it before. It's a little annoying if you're not playing as him. Kuang grabs a single target, damaging and knocking them up into the air. Okay. If the target is below a health threshold, Kuang will also reveal his true form, becoming an airborne dragon and executing them, restoring health. After transforming, Kuang then picks up a new location to land, dealing damage to enemies within 20 units. So that will also be demonstrated, but it's a pretty good ability. It's 90 to 290 plus 50%, and that is the initial damage. The execute is 30% of their health. It heals 10 to 30% of his maximum health, which is quite a decent amount. And the landing damage is 100 to 300 plus 50%, which is actually more than the base damage of the first lunge. It's a very interesting ultimate, doesn't do a lot of damage on its own. Water Illusion is his first ability. It's a teleport, but a better way to put it would be an in-combat blink. It has a radius of 30, so it has a range of 30 units that you can blink in any direction. And then it also has that 20 right there. Is this. So, Kuang teleports forward into stealth, so you're invisible. Leaving behind a watery form of himself, he remains in stealth for 5 seconds or until he attacks or takes damage. Not bad. Makes AoE attacks really annoying because you can have your stealth cancelled by stray minion arrow or god just throwing a random ability around because they're like, oh god, Kuang's invisible again. Kuang may activate this ability again to detonate the watery form, dealing damage to nearby enemies. 70 to 270 plus 60% of your magical power. That will also be demonstrated, but again, decent clear. It's got some decent clear. 15-second cooldown. Kind of trash. Dragon's Call. So this is an important one. This is probably what I would consider to be his bread and butter. One of the more important abilities for Kuang. What's going on over here? It's just notifications. Okay. So it is a stim/line. So we'll explain that. Kuang summons 6 dragons to his side. For every successful basic attack Kuang makes, a dragon will dive to the target, dealing additional damage. Target. This ability ends after all dragons are used or after 10 seconds. So in 10 seconds, the dragons disappear, or you use them with your basic attacks, or you shoot them out by activating the ability again to send forward any remaining dragons in a ranged attack. The dragons damage and slow the first enemy they hit. Attack damage is 30 to 90 plus 30%, and that's the stim to your basic attacks. The range damage is 20 to 40 plus 13% of magical power, which can actually be made to do a pretty decent amount of damage. The slow is 20% for 1 second plus 0.25 seconds per remaining dragon. So if you hit them with all 6 dragons, that's going to be 2.5 seconds. And then you've got Wild Storm. Kuang unleashes a storm of lightning from his sword, damaging all enemies in front of him. This hit will send a dragon from Dragon's Call forth, dealing damage to hit targets. 90 to 270 plus 40%. Important note about this is if you do actually have dragons call up while you use this ability, if you catch 3 enemies in your cone, it's a very small cone, but if you manage to catch 3 enemies in your cone, a dragon will go to each of them, which is very nice. And again, with the charges on the Dragon King's sword, if your passive is up, this will get a lower cooldown. You can build in cooldown reduction. You don't really need to, his cooldowns aren't too crazy, but the Water Illusion ability definitely has a pretty long cooldown. It's an in-combat blink though, so maybe it should. And then you've got the ultimate, which has got a pretty high cooldown for an ultimate in my opinion. So that's all we got for the basics. Now we're gonna hop into jungle practice. So what makes this tutorial different? Well, this time I'm actually going to jump into an arena so I can better demonstrate some gameplay of the god that I am doing a guide on. I feel like it's helpful to see some gameplay, and I actually even got a request for it, and I got a request for this video. And usually I edit out this part of the video, that's not the skin I picked, but okay. Haven't used this one yet, so sure. Normally I edit out this section of the video because it's like a loading screen and it's boring and I don't say anything. I take it as like a break to drink some water, but I wanted to mention that I'm uploading other things on my channel as well, and I'm trying to branch out a little bit, and so any and all support is appreciated. This is going to be my main focus for now, but once I run out of gods, or maybe intermittently, I'll be doing some guides on other gods. So we're going to skip the without items part for this first section of the guide, because again, I'm trying to do a little bit faster of a guide because I want to include that gameplay, and I don't want the video to be over 30 minutes long. That's ridiculous. So as far as relics go, Heavenly Wings, Blink, Bracer of Undoing is always a good item if you can get the timing down. Belt of Frenzy is actually not horrible on him if you're trying to do more damage, but because of the cooldown, it kind of makes it useless. So as far as relics that I recommend, it would be Purification, Heavenly Wings, Blink Rune, and where is it? Horrific Emblem, actually, so you can get away faster. If you use Aegis, you are a wuss. That's all I have to say about that. I usually build Blink because I'm an asshole. So first of all, we're talking about penetration or cooldown boots. I was mentioning earlier, his passive kind of wraps around this idea of cooldown reduction natively in his kit, which means you don't really need to build cooldown reduction, yet you absolutely can if you want to. I'm going to go with penetration boots for this first example build, and then we're going to go into something like, I think I'm going to do Demonic Grip first. Let me check my notes. Yeah, it's Demonic Grip. Now this is very dependent because you can actually start Bancrofts. Bancrofts is an important item. You're going to want it on Kuang, but you can build it first, second, or third item. In this instance, I'm building a third item. This is sort of a more, what's the word here? It's a C word. It's a word that starts with C. Conservative build. It's a bit more safe, so to speak. And then so for rings, you can go Telkines or Hastened. And Shaman's Ring is actually not a bad idea because it just gives you a crap ton of damage. But for this build, we'll actually be skipping over Shamans. The next item we'll be building is Obsidian Shard, and I'll be wrapping it up with Polynomicon. And if you are playing Kuang, I basically recommend building Polynomicon no matter what. For first item, you can actually get Hunter's Blessing or Mage's Blessing. Hunter's Blessing will actually do you a little bit better, but those are your options. And this is the really basic Kuang build that I normally go with. You can, of course, change it around as you see fit. Get a different ring, get a different lifesteal item. Bancrofts is just the best one that I know of right now. Polynomicon's kind of a must. Again, boots are interchangeable. And then you've got Obsidian Shard. You can pick whatever penetration you want. It's just guaranteed pen. It's basically true damage, which I kind of like. It's known as a tank killer item. So first of all, we'll demonstrate the abilities. I don't think I have any stacking items, but whatever. So as you can see, I'll show his clear really quick. I can go in with this, and this will do a decent amount of damage to the archers, and then I can actually teleport with my blink and detonate that to do damage. And you can see that the blink is on cooldown and the 3 is on cooldown, but if I hit an enemy with my 3, the base cooldown is 9 seconds. If I hit them, it's 7 seconds instead of 9 seconds. It actually gets cut. And then if I deal damage with my blink, the cooldown drops down another 2 seconds. And then every 20 seconds I'll get more. So as you can see, I'm doing X amount of damage. Just sort of observation on your end. But then I switch with my dragons out, and I do quite a bit more damage. And then there's the additional thing here. Let's just go down here. This is my passive running. Yeah. So if I actually buff this and go like that, dragon will go to him. I think the dragon's actually going to disappear first, but you see he's got a decent range, but it can only hit one target. So yeah, the dragons disappeared before I got to demonstrate. So we're going to wait about 5 seconds for both of those buddies to be back up. Have fun. So there you go. Dragon goes to each of them, does additional damage. Very convenient, and then you can shoot it out. It's going to slow him. I'll actually show the slow on this little Odin over here because he's the one that likes to get slowed. So come on, give me my... And then you smack him. See, it's 20% slow at his feet, and then it's going to disappear. We hit him with all 6 dragons, so it was 2.5 seconds. Really quick, I will demonstrate his ultimate ability. Hello, Neith, you're about to hate life. Now, important note, I can't believe I just brain deadly killed her. So just an important thing to note is that anytime you're going to enter combat as our Kuang, you actually want to activate your 2 every time. And don't forget, you can teleport out of roots. So we're going to... She killed herself. She killed herself by stepping on the button. And that's the ability without the threshold. So we'll peace out of here and go demonstrate the ability with the threshold active. So we can reset cooldowns. Okay. Neith, I have a surprise for you. Alright, so you press 2. I mean, normally with an engaging, you press 2 and then you blink in. And then you eat them. Whoa, I am a ship. Alright, and then when we dive down, it's going to do some damage. 458. Not bad, not bad. Important note is that if you're engaging, it's actually not a bad idea to wait out the duration of your 1, which for me is my Q, but press that, and then you can go ahead and use all 5 seconds, but keep in mind the cooldown only activates once the decoy has detonated and stealth has ended. But detonating the decoy ends your stealth, which is another important thing to note. So if I actually go like that, it's going to get rid of my stealth. So, excuse me? I press that button every once in a while, apparently. Yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to say about him currently. This is a pretty safe build. You can switch out one of these rings for shamans, and then if you wanted to get something like hastened instead, you can get a bit more attack speed and just have a slightly faster Kuang, because when you're hitting the enemy, you're gonna get that hastened effect, and you're gonna, you know, screw them up. The only thing is you're gonna do less damage to people like Ymir, gods like Ymir and Guan Yu, which is okay, because your main goal is to burst and then just eat them. Yeah, so that's about it. As far as alternate builds go, our Kuang can be built many different ways, but to be as effective as possible, you're going to want some attack speed, which is 1 or 2 rings. Shaman's Ring is going to give you a good damage boon, and then Bancroft's is almost a must-have, and Polynomicon is definitely a must-have. You'll regret it if you don't have Poly, because the thing about Poly on our Kuang is that it actually procs with the stem and does even more damage. And if you watch down below, I might clip the video, but if you watch down below, it procs when the dragon hits, so my next basic attack does actually additional damage, just like it should, from the... Okay, why do you gotta put up the wall, man? Like I said, so the basic attack damage actually gets stemmed from the dragons and from Polynomicon, and it just mixes together really well. Last thing to mention, I think for now, is that this passive right here, the Dragon King Sword, yeah. For the 1, it stacks only once your decoy does damage. I don't know if that counts for minions, actually, so let's go ahead and find out. It's just important to note the passive. Passive is very important. It's quite a boon, actually. Also note that it's recharging faster because I'm in jungle practice, so we're gonna blink. And no, okay, so it doesn't actually come off of enemy minions, only gods. Enemy god has reduced cooldown and heals our Kuang. Yeah, so If we blink away from an Odin, for instance, it will be 12 seconds rather than 15. 13 seconds rather than 15. This one will only get a reduced cooldown if you do damage with it with your double cast. So I don't know why I just mindlessly kept smacking. So you'll see I activate it. Cooldown is supposed to be 11 seconds. We shoot it at him, it's 9 seconds. Cooldown is supposed to be 9 seconds. We hit him with it, 7 seconds. So it's just an important note. I think it applies to the ultimate as well, but it's kind of silly because it's just 2 seconds off of 90 seconds. Wow, yay, I saved. Yeah, okay, whatever. Again, also important is that casting his ultimate, let's see, transforming, okay, yeah, I didn't mention this, is that if you attack an enemy that is at the threshold, there is still a moment where an ally can kill that enemy. But you don't need to worry, you'll still transform into dragon form, you'll still get full charges on your passive, and you can still dive to wherever you want within the radius of the ultimate, which is 200 units. Not bad. So don't freak out if someone steals your kill. It's not a big deal. I know it's less satisfying, but it's a team game. Get over it. Reiterating what I was saying about the ultimate, you still get put up as a dragon, whether or not you actually execute, unless they're above the threshold. So your main goal is getting them down to the threshold. He's really good for things like tower diving and one-on-one fights. In team fights, you're very likely to get focused because the enemy knows you have that execute. Most people that play this game are aware that Kuang has an execute and a combat blink, so they're probably going to be coming after you. Another important thing is that if you go into combat with your passive fully charged, you're better off using your passive to kill the enemy rather than using that execute unless absolutely necessary, especially in Conquest. Don't waste the execute. If I can 1v1 this Emir without using my execute, I really don't have a reason to execute. But if I see that he's got teammates coming around the bend, I'm going to execute him and fly away. It's that simple. It's situational. You don't have to use it every time. So you shouldn't be using your ultimate every time it's up trying to get an execute. I mean, unless you're in arena and you're just playing around, that's fine. But just don't put yourself in a dumb situation and don't lose your escapes because you're being stupid. Especially in terms of Conquest. If you're playing Conquest, you need to be more careful with A, when you use your first ability, and B, when you use your execute, because that has a 90-second cooldown, which is kind of awful. So you need to keep an eye on that. Reiterating, if you are 1v1ing an enemy and you can finish him off with a basic attack, and he has no escape, and his allies aren't coming, do not execute. It's a waste. However, if you see his Thanatos or something coming around the bend and he's got his 2 active and he's speeding at you with the scythe ready, execute and get out of there, because you're probably going to die, because he's got more lifesteal than you. Actually, no, because you could dive on him, deal some damage, you get health on execution, and then you get... Okay, you could possibly win that fight, but that's besides the point. Be careful. Kuang is not tanky by any means. He's a very frail young man. He just does lots of damage and does slows. It's a good escape tactic is hitting them with the slow. Again, you can go into combat, press your 2, and then just neglect using your 1, because well, especially if you're engaging in like a team fight or something, you want to dip in, do some damage, and dip out, or dip in, go grab an execute, or get an enemy out of the fight. So as you can see, when the enemy is not under threshold, I actually do get that throw, and they are up for so and so seconds, maybe 1 or 2 seconds. They're out of the fight, just like Kuang ult or Neja's ult. The problem with Neja's ult being that he is also out of the fight. Anyways, you can use Kuang's ultimate as a way to get the enemy out of the fight so that you and your teammates can get rid of a 5v4 or a 5v3 instead of a 5v4 or a 5v5. Quite simply.